Mythbusters terminology is very, very simple. Confirmed, busted, plausible. Confirmed, the assertion is true, meaning it is reasonable to believe it. There is data that supports it being so. Plausible, the assertion might be true, meaning it's at least possible that it's true, but they don't have enough information to say that it is true or it is not. So plausible is essentially the maybe. And busted, the assertion is demonstrably false, meaning it is not reasonable to believe it, there is evidence against it being so. The myth-busting terminology applied to God's existence. It's very simple. The theist, the assertion is true, God does exist, meaning it is reasonable to believe it, there is data which supports it being so. The agnostic is the plausible, the maybe, the assertion might be true, meaning it's at least possible that it's true, but they don't have enough information to say it is true or that it's not. Atheist, busted, the assertion is demonstrably false, meaning that it is not reasonable to believe it, there is evidence against it being so. Now how I define atheist. I define atheist as an individual person who chooses to affirm the statement there is no God or gods as a true statement. Thus, atheism, the belief that there is no God or gods. How atheists on the internet define atheism is having no belief in the existence of God. So to say that something or someone is atheistic is not to say they reject the existence of God, it's to say they merely lack a belief in the existence of God. And I've pointed out that makes my shoe an atheist. That makes my toaster an atheist, because neither my shoe nor my toaster have belief in the existence of God. They, I think it could be reasonably argued, lack a belief in the existence of God. Therefore, any unthinking object is an atheist on this definition. So let's start with the new popular internet definition of atheism. Now, when I started, I tended to think of these two as being equivalent. Atheism is either a lack of belief in the existence of God or a belief that no gods exist. I thought, that's kind of the same thing, right? But on this definition, no, these are not the same. One is a positive affirmation, the other is a lack of belief in a positive affirmation. So the first one, a lack of belief in the existence of God, that's how everyone's defining it now on the internet, according to the comments I get. This is not an assertion of fact, thus it has no burden of proof. They are not saying God doesn't exist, they're saying that they don't have a belief that God exists. On the other side is the belief that no gods exist. This is asserting a fact. It is asserting the fact that God does not exist, and thus this position has a burden of proof. The problem is they want to pretend that the conversation ends there. But very simply, if you define atheism to mean a lack of belief in the existence of God, very clearly an immediate question arises to define the worldview, and that is why. Why does a person lack a belief in the existence of God? If a person lacks a belief in the existence of God, there must be only one of two possible reasons why they lack that belief. Either they are certain of God's absence, and that's why they lack belief in his presence, or they aren't certain of his absence, but still don't have a belief in his presence. And so very simply, when you define atheism to mean a lack of belief in the existence of God, what you're saying is, an atheist is an atheist because they're an atheist or because they're an agnostic. And this is one of the reasons why I reject this definition, because it doesn't help, it just muddies the waters. On this definition, atheism could mean agnosticism, but we have two separate words there because they have two different meanings. I mean, what good does it do to use a word that could mean either the same word or a different word? Just make it simple on yourselves, people. Just acknowledge the fact that when you say I have a lack of belief in the existence of God, you have not yet stated your position. You have stated a fact about yourself which leads to your position, which is either agnosticism or atheism. Everybody got that? Fabulous. Moving on. Good to note also is that agnosticism has no burden of proof, but also no basis on which to criticize theism. If an agnostic's position is, I don't know, and that's as far as they go, they're welcome to ask whatever questions they want, and they have no burden of proof. But the moment that an agnostic says, I don't know, and you don't either, they have now asserted a position which they have a burden of proof to defend. The atheist just has a burden of proof, and has an overwhelming burden of proof, because they have to prove that something necessary, God, is impossible, which is ridiculous. It's like trying to write a persuasive essay showing that words don't exist. Please note I am distinguishing between those who believe that they are intellectually reasonable to believe God is absent, and those who merely feel theism must be wrong, or those who want theism to be wrong. There are three reasons why anyone believes anything. When people say they believe something, it's for one of these three reasons. First, intellectual. We think there is sufficient evidence to support the idea, and we think it reasonable or rational to believe it. Or on the other side, we think it irrational not to believe it. Emotional. It feels right. Or we reject an idea because we associate it with emotional pain. I don't want to believe that because it feels wrong somehow. And then there is the volitional, the will. I want this idea to be true, or I want this idea to be false. When I'm talking about atheists or theists, I am not talking about number 2 or 3. I'm not saying people who just stomp their feet and go, I don't want God to be there. Or people who say, well, I feel like God's probably there, so I feel like I'm probably a Christian. I'm talking about an intellectual position. These are the atheist agnostics. People who say, well, I'm an atheist because I don't believe that God exists. And when pressed, we'll go, well, do you believe God's absent? Well, no, I mean, God might exist, but I don't have a belief that he is there. Well, that makes you an agnostic. Your actual intellectual position is agnosticism. It's not atheism. Everybody got that? All right. Doing good so far. Thanks for coming out, you guys. It's good to see you here. I hope you're learning a lot. There's lots more to come. You guys taking notes? Gotta take notes, man.